I became the farm broadcaster, and within 6 months, I thought I was a real big shot. So I was using words and using things, and my dad would stop me and say, Harry, what were you meaning with that, what you said at noon today? And after the third time, I said to myself, if my father cannot understand me, I'm wasting my time. So from then on, I made sure that everything I said in public radio in print is so that my father could understand it, even though he passed away in 1984. And so that to me has always stayed with me. I became a communication specialist as a result of that.
Good day. My name is Phil Hord. I'm the host of today's podcast. Today we have Harry Siemens, a freelance farm writer and columnist. Harry is a farm journalist with more than 50 years of experience covering the pig industry. His roots in agriculture go back to 1957 when he helped feed pigs on his father's farm. Throughout Harry's career, he has clearly and closely observed how pig farmers care for their animals, the land, their communities, and families. Today, he is recognized as a respected voice in animal agriculture, focused on clear and honest communication about the whole role that farming plays in helping feed the world. So, Harry, thank you for taking time to share with us today.
A real pleasure coming on, and I've been blessed to be able to do this for this many years, and it's been fun. Somebody once told me, if you got a job you love, it's not work. And I don't know if I've gone to work one day in my life, except when I had to do the books.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great perspective. So today, Harry, in our conversation, we're going to be focused on you sharing about your career as a farm journalist over 50 years, as I mentioned earlier, and just the insights that you bring to the table from your various experiences and perspectives. So I'm excited to kind of learn from you here, and I'm sure our listeners will be as well, because that is a long career to be in and a crucial and important role in helping tell the story of what's actually going on across our great farming network and throughout the country and world. So, Harry, you've been covering the pig industry specifically for over 50 years, with you starting on your dad's farm in the 50s. So, how has the business of pig farming changed over the decades, in your opinion, and any lessons learned from those early days that still hold true today?
Well, the first thing I remember is carrying slop from the house to the barn to feed the pigs, right? And of course, a fork a hay fork and a shovel to clean out the manure. And we had a couple of pigs. It was just there. My dad was a grain farmer, but we had those pigs, so we had something to take care of and slaughter every year and to put in the freezer. And so that, of course, since then, in 71, I became a broadcaster. In 72, actually, a real farm broadcaster, not just animal agriculture, all agriculture, but I really focused on the hog production. And of course, I've watched all the way from you could just wander into a barn, didn't matter, to where the last time I did a farm visit in Canada was about a year ago in the fall of actually 2024. I had to shower in and shower out and take that ride from the farmer's house to the hog barn in his vehicle. And so from there, it was, all biosecurity. And I believe that's probably as important as anything. You can do all the other things right, but if your biosecurity is lacking and you have a disease outbreak, you can lose everything that you've worked for. So the big change in how we treat them, not only that, but, farmers never mistreated the pigs or their animals. But, with all the people, watching your hands and how you look after them. So Dr. John Carr is a world-renowned veterinarian, a personal friend since 2012. And when he visited hog barns, he would first see how the people on that farm treated their animals. And if a worker wasn't treating those animals properly, he went to the source and to make sure that that was changed. So I believe how you treat, how you feed, genetics, all of those things are really way beyond anything I could have ever anticipated, but it's been good to watch.
Yeah, a lot of progression over that time as we've learned about many new diseases would have come to the forefront during your career, and the ways that we mitigate those diseases have changed too, like you're indicating, right? We now think more about how disease can travel, virus can travel through the air, not just on contact, right? And the distance that those diseases can travel, in the air, and lots of learnings that we've now had, even over the last, say, 10 to 20 years that we had no idea about before. So I can only imagine.
Yes, exactly. And even going again back to Dr. John Carr, he was, really focused, and it was hard to do. But every hog farm should have a fence around it so that you knew exactly what was coming on and off that yard. Even though, producers feel a little awkward when people ask, "Well, what you hiding behind that fence?" Well, there's nothing that we're hiding, but at the same time, we have to be careful what the public thinks.
Biofractal is your AI-driven partner for understanding what's really happening inside chicken biology and turning those insights into action. Using scientifically validated methods, the industry's largest transcriptomic datasets, and proprietary biological indices, our savvy services turn complex molecular data into clear, practical insights that can be used to make decisions. R&D and technical teams, veterinarians and nutritionists rely on Biofractal to validate modes of action, compare solutions, and troubleshoot performance, accelerating product development in nutrition, health, and genetics, and enabling measurable gains in bird performance and welfare under real production conditions.
A nice segue into my next question for you there. So you've watched the farmers not only care for their animals, but also their land, and how that relates to their involvement in communities, how they are working with their families. Agriculture is still very largely a family-oriented industry. But what do you think the public often misunderstands about the values and the responsibilities that we have as producers?
Well, number one, as you know, social media has become very, very active. So whatever one sees on social media, and we also know there's big money behind discrediting animal agriculture and production. We've seen that all over the place. So we have to be really careful that we know what we're talking about, that we have nothing to hide. But at the same time, that doesn't mean we have to open up the entire bag for everybody to see, because that's when diseases and things happen. So the view. So I've seen, especially here in Manitoba, where I'm based, Manitoba Port, they have a wonderful community program which involves producers, involves the community, involves advertising, social media, whatever it may be, video, audio, print. But they're telling the story of farming, and they're getting farmers who are able to tell that story. For many years, I did communication seminars with producers on how to tell the story of farming, so that not only does it sound good, it's got to be believed. Perception is such a huge issue. So you got to, I'm part of a small courtyard, about 13 condos. I'm the vice chair, and everybody else does want nothing to do with the organization and management. So a new guy came in to become the chair, and now we're doing it together. And I said to him, I says, "Barry, remember this." And Barry used to be in the hog business. Remember this, that we got to make sure we do everything right. Not only that we know it's all right. It's got to be perceived to be done right. And I think that's what the hog industry that I'm learning and have learned to work with, that's what they're doing. They want to be perceived to make sure, number one, they're treating their animals right. Number two, they're feeding them right. And not only that, the land where the barns sit on, that also has to be treated right. And one thing we have to never forget as a consumer, that the farmer is making his or her living off of that land and off of that animal. Do they think they will mistreat it? Absolutely not. Yes, we have some bad apples, but at the same time, we got to be aware of that.
Yeah, the common theme in everything you're saying is communication, and it's communicating what is happening on the farm as more and more individuals are no longer involved in the farm and understand how food actually gets to the table. And it's a big responsibility. It's no longer just the responsibility of caring for the animal. It's also being able to tell that story in a way that is understood. We cannot use large terms or industry-specific terms, right? We have to use terms in such that people understand and welcome questions. And I've experienced that through in-person, tours and conversations, but also even virtually, and being willing to open the doors that way while sometimes we can't physically go to farms. So there's many ways in our new age, I think what I can hear you saying is we have to engage the public in that way, not as a fun thing necessarily anymore, but as a necessity to help make sure that we are educating while also providing a level of comfortability and understanding with how things are done.
I want to tell you this little story about my father. My father in 1960 was farming 1,200 acres. That was a huge farm at that time. We had a few pigs, but we had, we raised grain for seed. So I was going to be a farmer. I promised him in 1967 I would farm forever because he helped me buy a quarter section. Well, things happened in 71. I come home from university, and my father says, there's a job opening at the local radio station. I wish you would apply. Dad had maybe grade 4 education. And at the same time, he saw something. So he said, and within a month, I stepped off the tractor into that studio and started to learn about broadcasting. The reason I'm sharing this, I became the farm broadcaster, and within 6 months, I thought I was a real big shot. So I was using words and using things, and my dad would stop me and say, Harry, what were you meaning with that, what you said at noon today? And after the third time, I said to myself, if my father cannot understand me, I'm wasting my time. So from then on, I made sure that everything I said in public radio in print is so that my father could understand it, even though he passed away in 1984. And so that, to me, has always stayed with me. I became a communication specialist as a result of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have a similar experience. My wife did not grow up on a farm, and so I, having grown up on a farm, had to understand, had to learn how to help her understand certain things. And so, what may be common barnyard or farm talk needed to turn into, okay, this is a good opportunity to listen to what's the other side of me and what are people actually hearing. And I love that example that you give, because it does influence how you think about those conversations. And really, it's actually relating more to the impact that you're having by them actually understanding versus just wondering and more confusion that can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And quite often I would do a seminar. I've also been a lay preacher in my time, and I would have a presentation, a message or something, and somebody would say, we could actually understand you and what you said. And I said, well, if you couldn't, why would I be here? And so that's so important, going back to the farm. I'm really proud. I had a mentor by the name of Orion Samuelson, who was a farm broadcaster, WGN Chicago, 60 years. And he became my personal friend. He's since retired, obviously. But at the same time, he says, number one, serving agriculture, the basic industry, is an absolute honor. The other thing he had for consumers, he says, if you eat, you're involved in agriculture. So let's be careful how we view things, how we tell things, and how we get things going.
Feed formulation software is stuck in the past. Most tools haven't evolved beyond basic least cost optimization. A Diet Forge changes that. It's an AI-powered platform with nonlinear ingredient modeling for enzymes and additives, cost per gain and maximum profit optimization, and real-time collaboration like Google Docs for nutrition. Every recommendation is grounded in world-class research, built for modern nutritionists who need more than legacy desktop software can deliver. Work seamlessly with your team and optimize the way modern operations demand. Try dietforge.ai free today. Feed formulation, finally modernized.
So as the pressure mounts from groups, you mentioned earlier the bad apples that sometimes have gotten our industry into bad press. So as the pressure mounts from some of the groups that are opposed to animal agriculture and production, what do you believe is the most important message that our industry needs to communicate to consumers and policymakers and the public?
Number one, we have to, again, be careful that we know exactly where the negativism is coming from. And I can't overemphasize that enough. What's the source of what you're reading on social media? What's the source of that article, TV show, whatever it may be? Make sure you know the source. I interview quite often the president of the animal ag AAA from the U.S. Animal
Alliance.
Yeah, you bet. And they keep me informed, to make sure to tell people. And so now we have to make sure we know the source. And then, as we've already shared a little bit here today, we have to make sure we have the message, not just a message. We've got to have the real stuff, the real work. I've gone to so many meetings in Europe, US, and Canada, with hog producers. And invariably, we get great spokespeople. But then, of course, somebody comes along and sneaks in and gives a message that, what? So anyway, we have to be careful, the source. Number two, we got to make sure we know our message. And thirdly, we got to live that message. And then when somebody says, can I come to see what you're doing? Well, under biosecurity rules and those kinds of things. But at the same time, like this one Hutterite colony, like a year ago, they'd gone to lose housing. And he invited me in. He says, Harry, I'd like you to do a story. Well, I says, okay, what do I have to do? He says, then I told you, make sure you shower in, shower out, and then from there. So source, we got to know the story, got to know how to tell that story, and to make sure it's perceived to be correct. And then we got to live the story. And if we're asked to show it and explain it, do so under current confines of regulation.
You said that a lot about what you're talking about is creating honesty and confidence when we're telling our agricultural story and telling the truth, So from your perspective as a journalist, what makes a message really resonate with the audiences who may be skeptical of what you're communicating?
Here in Manitoba, we have a couple of farm days. I think one's coming up. Discover Agriculture. It's right in downtown Winnipeg at the Forks. And booths are set up and different things are set up. And people that come there are prepared to give their story the way it is. So we have to obviously do those kinds of things. And then there's other places. We have to go to the consumer. We can't just wait for the consumer to come to us and when we got a problem. So we go to the consumer we tell the story, whether it's the Royal Winter Fair we have in Brandon, Manitoba, or Toronto, wherever it is, tell our story and show them the quality of care, the quality of animals, and the quality of the final product. And we can't be afraid to withhold, to make it seem as if we're hiding something. No, we got to do it full 100%.
Really, that authenticity component of it is important there. Yeah.
Totally.
So while it might be different, their perception of what's happening, can change based off of communication and discussion. And, it can be important to try to better understand why, there's probably different motives around why they're concerned about what they are. It could be for themselves personally or their family. But it may be, that they have ulterior motives, right? Maybe they are trying to see the removal or the prohibition of animal agriculture. But at the same time, I think the vast majority, those seem to be the ones that are the most vocal, but the vast majority are just wanting to have a better understanding, right? So meeting them where they are is, I think, what you're suggesting, and being present.
That's right. And that's why I really appreciate the fact when you can walk into an exhibition, walk into a facility, whether it's public or not quite as public, and there are people showing the product and not afraid to defend. That doesn't mean we're defending something bad, but to describe and to say, why? Why am I farming? Why am I a journalist? Why are you doing what you're doing? And if you know that, then you can tell that. If I know it, I can tell it. The same with producers. But the other thing, I believe, we have great university facilities that have people involved from the industry, that we make sure we get the right message out. I think that's another thing. It's one thing to have organizations and producers, but it's another thing to have the learned people, the people that have learned it and now are prepared to share it as they've learned it and experienced. So, I'm very, when I started as a farm broadcaster here in Manitoba, it was just like we had Manitoba agricultural representatives in all the different rural communities. And I knew nothing about kinds of things. So I would go and rely totally on these guys. I could name a whole bunch who were there. I could interview. They would take me to meetings. And eventually I got to know what I needed to do on my own. But I'm never afraid to ask. I'm going to be 80 years old this year, and I'm still open to learning and asking, how can I do it a little bit better? And I think I just don't, I'd be remiss if I didn't give the whole educational system, and then the whole research. I mean, I've been to genetics companies where they've taken me right in to where they're doing their basic work, and so I've had that understanding with my camera, with my recorder. I could tell the story. Those are the kinds of things, and I give credit to those companies. I give credit to the universities and all the different extension workers, because if we didn't have them, we would really be in trouble at this point.
Totally agree. They are the force behind what we do every day on the farm in many ways, because they are helping us forge those new paths and continue learning. I really love that comment. And I think the folks that, in my experience, those that are turning 80 or older, right, that think, oh, I've made it here in my life, right? Well, I love hearing that from you, because that's such a wise thing that I've heard from a few others is that we can always learn more, we can always improve our understanding, we can always be better tomorrow than we were today. So I definitely appreciate that comment.
I would like one other observation up to what happened. Yesterday, I attended my cousin's 100th birthday. there were probably 60, 70 people, at this function. And this lady, my cousin, Marie, she was totally with it. And you could hear from family, and so, but at that particular function, I felt like a youngster because there were quite a few people older than I am. The evening, I went to a basketball game with my 12-year-old grandson. So I come there and I'm the oldie, I'm walking out and I'm talking to a couple of young guys and I said, you know what? And I told them this story. And I think, and they said, no, Siemens says, and that's what I've been going by as well. It says, Siemens says we'll never get old. Well, we'll wait and see. But what I'm saying is we need to be able to judge the audience, do with that audience what it is that resonates. It's one thing for me to say, oh yeah, but I am always conscious of who I'm speaking with and to make sure that I come at their level, whether I'm lower or they're higher, doesn't matter. At the same level, that's where we got to be.
So looking ahead, what encouragement would you give to the next generation of farmers and communicators who will carry this industry forward in the face of growing challenges that we have?
I attended the Manitoba Swine Seminar, a 2-day event, February 4th and 5th of this year. And I've attended it since day one. And so at that meeting, again, I was probably the oldest at that meeting. Secondly, I probably, had been involved in Agricultural Reporter longer than these people were alive. But I'm saying that because we've got young people coming to these meetings. So if a farm, and I've talked to quite a few fathers who have passed the farm over to their sons, if possible, but not, they bring in people that can run that farm. So we have to make sure that, number one, to the older generation, don't take for granted that they know everything the way you think you've taught them. Secondly, make sure you understand whether they really want to be in the business. And going back to my dear brother and friend, Dr. John Carr, that's the thing he would say, if you're not wanting to look after these animals properly, then maybe you should find yourself another place of work. So it's the older generation's responsibility to make sure the younger generation understands what it is they're getting into. But my father was able to step aside when my brother, who was older than I, when he continued with the farm, he just became the hired man. And he let my brother make the decisions, even for his land. But it was a great handoff, and it's still scoring a touchdown today because my brother is farming full time at 88. And so make sure that we tell the next generation what it is we've learned, but don't be afraid to learn from them.
Well, thank you for sharing that stuff today. That was all very good and I think very relevant stuff to be thinking about as we continue forging forward and continuing to advance our industry from what's happening on the farm to the perspective of our consumer and those that are obviously involved. I like your comment earlier too, where, even as a consumer, they're involved in agriculture too, even though it's in a different way. And so I appreciate that.
It's time for our famous three.
Tired of solving swine nutrition challenges alone? The Swine Nutrition Inner Circle connects swine nutritionists who share real insights on formulation, ingredient variability, and diet adjustments. When you need clarity, experts are just a conversation away. Join at swinenutritioninnercircle.com and connect with peers who understand the work you do every day.
As we close out our time today, we have some questions that we ask each of our guests, so we'll hit those here quickly. Do you have a favorite swine-related book or resource that you use?
when I go to the Manitoba Swine Seminar or the Banff Swine program in Banff, what I really like, and I have a stack of them, is the book that they print with the people in it, with some of the speeches in it, and a lot of information. I like to go to those sources. When I come home, I make sure I review them, and I've done interviews, I've done different things. I want to get it right. And so the information is right. So I don't have really any book other than the source and resources that I get, but I certainly love to go to the same people time and time again, because that to me has probably been the biggest resource for me, is going back to the people in the business.
Do you have a favorite book or resource outside of the industry?
Well, I used to be I read every business magazine or book I could get my hands on. I've been self-employed since 1985. But if I may say, I do read the Bible every day.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's probably the book, or not probably, it's the book I go to. But at the same time, I see so many people that I just use as my friends and my resources.
Love that. In your opinion, as we close, what sets successful professionals apart from those that are less successful? What is the differentiator for you?
I have a motto: a positive mental attitude. To encourage and to serve and to inspire others will motivate me to do my best. I've used that since 1986 in all my presentations, seminars. And so the reason I say that, if we can be an encourager, and as I said earlier, be prepared to listen, because communications, 70% of miscommunication is happening by the person trying to communicate. Why? Because they don't listen. So and it's determination. I mean, I've talked to so many different people. You have those people that can start a business, but they can't ever finish it, but they know enough to sell it to somebody else that can. Then they go on and start another one. Then there are those that just never. I got recently remarried after my first wife passed away, and I've now married 20 months. My first wife was a nurse. My second wife is an interior and building designer for almost 40 years. When we got together, her creativity is what really struck a note in me. And so creativity, when I do seminars, when people say, well, hey, haven't you got any comments? No, I says, I'm too afraid to ask. I says, the only stupid question, sorry for the comment, is the one that doesn't get asked. And so ask, don't be afraid to ask and listen to those beyond that have been in the business longer than you. So a positive mental attitude to encourage and to serve and to inspire will motivate you to do your best.
Love that. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing today. I was inspired by this conversation and just your energy and your attitude from coming at being involved in the industry for so long. So thank you for sharing. And I'm sure our listeners will enjoy that as well. So have a good day, Harry. Thank you for being on our podcast.
It's my absolute pleasure and honor.